So the class is being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone. This is AA100A, and we're doing the second book. We're doing the chapter on Plato, moral beliefs, Plato and moral beliefs. We started the chapter off last time, and we kind of gave you some broad concepts about philosophy, what philosophy means, and its practitioners whom we call philosophers. We spoke about different concepts when it comes to philosophy and how people philosophize. Philosophizing is obviously about using your mind, is about being organized, your thoughts. You start with claims or premises and you end up with conclusions. So we're pitting philosophy and rational thinking against moral traditionalism, where the focus is normally on, accepting things as is, as they are. I said, I remember that I said whenever we talk about philosophy, we talk about this rational capacity, the capacity for using people's mind. Um, Again, this is what we're doing. We have moral beliefs, and those moral beliefs are, for the most part, traditional, and they are inherited from the old generations. And we have a group of people who would say, no, moral beliefs or traditional moral beliefs are fine and everything, but we need to kind of subject them to our powers of reasoning and our faculty of reason or mind. We need to check whether they are as relevant as they were in the past, whether they make sense as they used to make in the past. The bottom line would be not to take things for granted. The bottom line would be that we need to question everything, and we need to challenge notions and concepts that have been accepted down through the ages. There is obviously nothing wrong with that, unless you are a moral traditionalist who believes that we have to accept things that come to us from the past as is, with no questions asked. So this is the kind of clash that we have. The clash that we're having in this chapter is between moral traditionalism and moral rationalism. Again, rationalism is empirical, is about using your senses and your sense experiences, and also using your mind. Um, on the other hand, moral traditionalism is about holding tradition from the past in great esteem and never questioning them. So what is Plato and Socrates are doing here? They are trying to raise our awareness about the importance of using our minds. They are raising our awareness about the importance of challenging concepts, questioning them and see whether they are valid and relevant or not. Okay, so let's go to the book and see. Kind of pick up what we left over last time. So do you have any questions? Did you have a chance? I know that Abdelrazik didn't have a chance to go over the chapter, but how about the others? Did you have a chance to go to the chapter and kind of, read it? Those who did, raise your hand or say something. Okay, so obviously nobody read anything.
I think, Doctor, because of the midterm exams, all the students are busy, maybe.
Uh, yeah,
I
that's
see.
true, but you still have other people who can juggle between different tasks, and I would like to listen to them and from them. Do we all have the same problem? I mean, remember what kind of exams you did your AA 100 on Sunday, right? Which is way back, right?
No, no, I did today. I did U 14, U to 14 B. The subject or is so very heavy.
Okay. Right. Anyway, let's go to the chapter and start our discussions. Okay.
Doctor, are we going to have our next quiz next week?
Check the calendar. If the calendar says next week, we will do next week.
11th, it says 11th week.
11. Okay. We'll work on some. Yeah. Did I provide a date or something?
No, you didn't provide the date.
So I only said week 11, right?
Yeah, okay. According to the
So
calendar.
okay. So when was that? I mean, quiz one was on what day? Yeah, because I'm going to make it the same day and the same hour. Go back, and then
Um,
I'll send you an announcement. I'll post an announcement on the LMS tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, so we're doing philosophy this time around, and this chapter is philosophy. And we spoke long and enough about what philosophy means and what philosophers do and the kind of arguments that they engage in. Okay, so these are the things that we're addressing. What is traditional belief, Plato and Socrates, and their any kind of place in the history of philosophy in Athens, and Plato and Socrates, and whether Socrates that we're having in Plato's work is the real and the historical Socrates, or is he a fictional one? And we said we have established the fact that the Socrates that we meet in Plato's work is the fictional Socrates, not the historical one, because Socrates, when Plato wrote his stuff, was long dead. So, as a kind of tribute to his teacher, Plato made sure that he features him in his different works. Talk also about Socrates and his his method of questioning and further questioning and all these kinds. We'll talk about why he is doing that and whether that is acceptable by his interlocutors or not. The things that we're working on, the material that we're working on, is Laches, and this is obviously a piece of work by Plato and also Meno, which is another piece of work. Um, in the process, we'll talk about the definition of courage and what courage means, and then we extend the concept and talk about the idea of virtue, and we get examples of virtuous behavior and whether it can be limited to an aspect of life, or we can expand it and all these kinds of things. Remember, we also spoke about the Socratic method, and we said that in teaching and learning it is used widely, especially in law schools, because it depends on the idea of questioning. You kind of pose a question and invite people to answer it, and then you kind of argue with them, argue for or against the answer using uh, um, philosophical and logical arguments that normally start with premises and then end with conclusions. I'm not going to revisit that because we have already spoken about philosophy with its two branches, ontology and epistemology. Spoke about the different philosophers, especially the very famous three Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and how Socrates happens to be the teacher of Plato, and Plato happens to be the teacher of Aristotle. And we said that Plato is more of a mind philosopher. He's a rational philosopher where the focus is on the idea and the idea is in the mind, while Aristotle is an experimental and empirical philosopher whose starting point would be the senses, sense experience. He is pragmatic, he is empirical, and of course, he uses the mind, but his point of departure would be the senses, the different senses. Socrates is a moral philosopher who is normally engaged with big moral questions like justice, virtue, and all these kinds of things. When we talk about philosophy, of course, we talk about logic and reasoning, and you use deductive or inductive reasoning in kind of explaining things to people, in also discovering things. Deductive and inductive are, of course, mental and rational methods of, getting to know about things. Any logical argument starts with premises and ends with conclusions. Um, I asked you to read about logical fallacies. We'll talk about that at the end of the class and see whether you have had time to go over them or not. Again, we ended, I think, our discussions with two very important teaching and learning methods. We have the traditional method, which is more of a teacher-fronted class. The teacher says everything, and the students only receive. On the other hand, you have the Socratic method, which is more or less like a leveling process, um, where the teacher is just a facilitator. He asks the questions and then moderates and regulates the discussions, allowing everybody to create and contribute input. We spoke about learning, and we said that learning can be done through instruction. Instruction means that you have somebody like me giving you the information ready-made, and not inviting you to kind of react and give your input and your reaction and response. And the other method would be the discovery method, which allows you to discover things for yourself, depending on research, on investigation, and finally on reflection. And this is more of the philosophical type. Remember, we spoke also about how reading a philosophical text is different from reading a non-philosophical text. Reading a philosophical text is very, I wouldn't say challenging. I would say that it would need, of course, focus and concentration. It would need you to read between and beyond the lines. It would need you to be very attentive. reading the whole thing, and then going back to the details, highlighting things if you can, taking down notes, being very careful with the words and not trying to change the certain concepts and words because changing them would change the meaning. So the bottom line would be that you need to move on eggshells when it comes to approaching a philosophical text. You don't deal with it the way you deal with a newspaper article, for example. So these are the things that we said that we should consider when dealing with a philosophical text. You need to pay close attention to details. You need to read a whole section to get the gist. Gist would be the general meaning and the general idea. You need to underline or highlight keywords or phrases. You need to put things in your own words. You need to always remember that some words are not replaceable. You cannot change them, and changing them can compromise the meaning. The meaning can be different. And of course, the idea of writing things down. Again, we're talking about the theme or the main idea of the chapter is moral beliefs. And there are two approaches in, talking about moral beliefs. When it comes to moral beliefs, people are either moral traditionalists or moral rationalists. Moral traditionalists means that they strongly believe in tradition, and they strongly believe that whatever comes from the past is true, is accurate, and wouldn't need any reconsideration. Moral rationalists, on the other hand, are different. Moral rationalists believe that everything should be subjected to the mind. If the mind accepts it is valid and acceptable. If the mind has reservations or says that this is not very rational, this is not very logical, we discard it and we don't deal with it. And this is the contention and the conflict and the clash that we have. The clash that we have is on whether to accept moral beliefs at their face value because they come to us from the past, or whether to test them and assess them using our mental powers. Again, when we talk about moral rationalists, we talk about philosophers who normally use their minds in assessing things and whether to accept things or not. Moral traditionalists are not philosophers. They are normally, people like me and you and everybody else who do not put a huge premium on the mind. They accept things as they are because they believe that what comes from the past is always good. It's tested. It was used by people that we love, the old generation, and if it worked with them, why not they work with us? So, like I said, we're doing extracts from the Laches and Meno, and these are works by the Greek philosopher Plato. And in these works, we have another philosopher by the name of Socrates, who is normally the main character in those works. What is interesting about those works is the fact that they are not narrative. Narrative, you don't have somebody who is telling you a story, who's writing or is writing in a prosaic way where you have paragraphs and stuff. No, you don't have that. We have dialogues and all the work is dialogic. Dialogic in the sense that you have people you normally have it's either dialogic or what we call polyphonic. Polyphonic means that you have different voices and they are asking questions and answering each other. So it's a conversational in nature, and this is typical of Plato, who does not believe in the idea of only giving things. He tosses up a point and then have people kind of debate around this point. So like I said, his works are all dialogues. So we have Laches and we have Meno, and these are two different works, and we're having extracts from them. Again, the argument is all about traditional beliefs and questioning traditional beliefs. Again, we unpacked the phrase traditional belief, and we said that traditional beliefs are the ideas and the concepts and the values that we inherit from the old generation. They are part of our belief system, our tradition, and for the most part, we accept them as is. And we're having the example of dock leaves, and those leaves, if you have a headache, for example, you don't automatically go to the drugstore or to the doctor in order to heal or cure this kind of headache. Your mom or your father would, prescribe or ask you to go uh, um, to the herbal store, to the store where there are lots of herbs and plants, and you bring in a piece or a leaf, and then you sometimes you boil it, for example, and you apply it to the area where you have pain in. So this is when you ask people who are doing that whether they have proof that those things are curable, they would tell you that we have inherited those recipes from our parents and grandparents, and we believe that they work. Um, Again, this is traditional beliefs. One of them happens to be about curing, about kind of praying in a certain way, doing this, doing that. Again, why wouldn't people question that? Because we take them for granted. We take them for granted because they come to us from people that we love from the past, and the past is always held in great respect and in esteem by everyone. Um, so I believe that has been passed down from one generation to another, and that someone has simply absorbed from other people without examining it for him. So the issue here is that we don't examine those beliefs. The issue here, especially with philosophers, is that they have to be examined. And how do you examine beliefs? You examine them, according to Plato and Socrates, through the mind. So this is an example of a belief from the past. The belief here is that this leaf can cure, can get you or rid you of pain, remove pain. Did we test that? We only inherited the idea from the old generation, but we're not even in a position to test it, because this is obviously not our job. Now we live in an age where you have specializations. You can't be a doctor and an ordinary person and everything. So you leave things to people who are expert in. Okay, so this is beliefs that we inherit from the past. So many of our beliefs are traditional. They include ethical or moral beliefs, that is, beliefs about the ways in which people should conduct their lives and treat other people. What are some of the beliefs that are very widespread? When you say that it is wrong to tell a lie, for example, this is a belief. It is wrong to be, there is nothing wrong with eating meat. Okay. Do we stop and ask ourselves why we eat meat and why not? In certain areas they don't eat meat. So these are again things that we inherit, that come to us from the past, and we accept as is. Um, so you normally, especially if you're young, you accept those or these beliefs on trust. You trust them, you don't ask questions. Um, so again, why would I believe them? Because if I don't believe in them, that would kind of create disharmony in society. So if people are not, those moral beliefs, those beliefs in general, those traditional beliefs act like the cement that unite the different members of society together. So there is a core that everybody moves around. You still have this idea that examining traditional moral beliefs can be a time-consuming thing. So but the doctor leave, for example, you're not a doctor, and you don't have a lab, so that you can test whether uh, um, using this kind of plant would make sense or not. From the scientific point of view. So again, it takes time. That's why you sometimes accept stuff as is, because you don't have the time, you don't have the luxury, you don't have the means and the resources to test it for yourself, and also because you trust those who used them before you, the old generation. So traditional moral beliefs are shared by the members of a community. And as long as all members of the community act in accordance with traditional beliefs, everyone will know what kind of behavior to expect from everyone else. So those beliefs, those traditional beliefs, are important because they regulate our lives. They give us the unity that we need as members of the community. So, and also because if individuals start questioning traditional beliefs, there will be confusion and conflict. Moral beliefs also have a long history, and they reflect the experience and wisdom of many generations. So this is the reason why people are using traditional moral beliefs. Again, because of the people that we inherit those beliefs from, and also because we don't have the time to kind of conduct the necessary tests, and also because of the unity that those and harmony that those beliefs kind of offer us as members of the community. Again, the view that tradition is the best source of moral beliefs is called moral traditionalism. While the opponents of moral traditionalism include philosophers, and we normally call what they do moral rationalism. So moral rationalism is about not to accept things on trust. Moral rationalism is about challenging and questioning beliefs, and checking whether they make sense or not, whether they are relevant or not. So moral rationalists argue that we ought to question existing moral beliefs and retain or keep only beliefs that can be rationally defended and explained. So they hold that it is reason means the mind, not tradition, that is the proper basis for our moral beliefs. So Plato is a philosopher. Of course, you expect him to be a moral rationalist, not a moral traditionalist. He will use rational argument to question traditional beliefs. And of course, rational argument is about investigating uh, using, of course, your power, your mental powers. So why does Plato reject tradition? Again, this is very self-evident and self-explanatory. Again, because those sets of tradition are based on accepting things as they are at their face value, without questioning, without challenging, without testing. And as a philosopher, he wouldn't do that. As a philosopher, he believes that everything should be subjected to reason. Everything should be tested using the power of the mind or reason. So why does Plato think that our moral beliefs should be grounded on reason rather than on tradition? Why does he reject moral traditionalism in favor of moral rationalism? Again, we spoke enough about that, and we'll talk more about it. It's again about the idea that with moral traditions and traditions in general, you don't use your mind. Again, when Plato talks about tradition, he doesn't only talk about moral tradition. He also talks about even philosophical tradition. The bottom line for him would be that you shouldn't accept things as is. Otherwise, you'll be more or less like a parrot. You know, the parrot or the barbarian, you're only mimicking and copying things, and you never use your mind. And this is, of course, false. According to him, this is false knowledge. It is true that you have knowledge, but this kind of knowledge is false, is not based on rational judgment and rational thinking. Um, Again, we do have Socrates in the dialogues that we're having, and of course we know that Socrates was or had been dead long before Plato wrote his work. So who is this Socrates? Like we said, this Socrates is a fictional, is a made-up Socrates that Plato, invented and used in his work. And you would ask why he would do that, and the answer is simple. He was trying to honor the memory of his teacher. The fact that Socrates also had a problem. He never wrote a book or anything. He was all the time moving around in the marketplace and talking to people. He never wrote down anything. So as a tribute to his teacher, Plato included him in most of his philosophical work as one of the characters. So in his dialogues, Plato portrays Socrates discussing a range of philosophical issues with other people. So most of the dialogues are named after one of the other characters involved, like Laches, for instance. Laches happens to be one of the characters. and he is an Athenian general. Um, so the dialogues do not record actual conversations that took place while Socrates was still alive. No, like I said, the Socrates that we have in Plato is not the historical Socrates who died long before that was written. Um, Again, you need to also remember that Plato's work is more or less like a literary work. He is very poetic. You wouldn't feel that was prose, written in prose. Of course, translation, whatever we're doing is a translation of the original work, which was written in Greek. So you wouldn't enjoy it. I mean, but those who know Greek know that those dialogues were very poetic and very sweet. You can feel it with the analogies that Plato is using. Uh, um, so we're talking about Socrates, not the historical one, and of course his method, as we're going to see. So it is very important to distinguish between the real historical Socrates and the character that appears in Plato's dialogues. While the historical Socrates was clearly an important influence on Plato, there is no reason to assume that Plato wrote his dialogues simply as a showcase for Socratic philosophy. Of course, Plato has his own philosophy, which is more or less a continuation of Socratic philosophy. They agree more than they disagree. I mean, both of them are philosophers. They use their minds, and their points of departure would be the same. The idea that people have to have absolute trust and confidence in the mind. Plato presents Socrates as interested primarily in moral questions, the qualities or virtues that people need in order to live a good life. These are primary concerns of Socrates, the Socrates that were given by Plato in his work. As an example, when we go to Laches, for example, we'll see that Socrates is concerned with the nature of courage. In other dialogues, you will have discussions of piety, friendship, temperance, and justice. Again, what is interesting about Socrates would be the fact that he doesn't answer the questions that he poses. He only, kind of asks questions, and then he leaves you on your own trying to answer them. When you come up with an answer, he starts to challenge the answer in order to perhaps give you the bigger picture. When you're fed up giving him so many answers, and he's saying no, this is not the right answer, you would ask him, okay, give us the answer key then. Why are you why keep asking me questions, and I give you answers and you say no? Oh, give me the answer. He would say no, I don't know the answer myself. And that would link to the idea of practicality, the fact that he believes that knowledge without experience is nothing. This is what we're going to realize at the end. He may have the knowledge, he may have the answer, but this answer is not inspired by experience. That's why he avoids giving the answer. For him, it has to be knowledge, it has to be backed up by experience. So in the Laches, his question about courage is addressed to two military generals. This is how it starts. We have two military generals, Greek generals, and somebody kind of stop them and says, listen, I want to my son to receive the highest education. So what kind of education do you think can make him a good citizen? And they would give him different answers, and those answers are normally inspired by the fact that they are military generals. But they disagree. The two generals would disagree. Laches and Nicias would disagree. And when they disagree, they would ask Socrates to come over to give the right answer. Socrates puts it to the test by asking, when Socrates comes, he takes the conversation somewhere else. He asks them a series of further questions, and this is where it all starts. So Socrates simply asks questions without putting forward opinions of his own. So the point of these questions is to investigate whether the person's answer is consistent with other things that he believes. All the characters in Plato's dialogues are also male. So we now have a glimpse of how it goes with Socrates. He only asks questions, and then when you come to him with answers, he would ask you further questions, and he doesn't give any opinions of his own. Again, it's all about investigating the person's answer and see whether it is consistent with other things that he says and does or not. So when you look at the answers of those different characters in the dialogue, you'll find that none of them would give the right answer according to Socrates. They never, with their answers, they never pass Socrates' test. Again, that would be very frustrating if you ask me a question and I give you an answer, and then instead of saying, okay, good, and everything, you would say, no, this is not the right answer. When I ask you to give me the answer key or to answer, you would say, no, I don't know. So why ask in the first place? So the impression that people got when they dealt with Socrates, that he is a trickster, that he is tricking them, that he is trying to baffle them, to confuse them. And that was the impression that lots of people got. The fact that he wants to frustrate and baffle them. And again, that would make of him a trickster or a deceiver, which of course he wasn't. It's just that this is his way of, kind of unpacking concepts and breaking them down to their basic components. Again, Socrates was accused of irritating and bothering people and intriguing and baffling them. So there is one frequent complaint about Socrates that is worth a closer look. Some of Plato's characters and some of the readers too are irritated by Socrates' refusal to put forward views of his own, while being quite ready to criticize the views of others. So normally he responds by saying that he genuinely does not know the answers to the questions that he is investigating. He says he comes up with some assumptions, and those assumptions help to determine the questions that he asks and the lines of argument that he develops. But he never gives you a clear-cut answer. So conversations with Socrates often take certain recognizable turns, returning to the same points again and again. And it looks as if Socrates is being irritatingly deceitful when he claims not to know the answers to his own questions. People are normally under the impression that he is deceiving them. Again, no, this is not what he had in mind. He is trying to kind of elicit everything from the one that he is talking to by asking so many questions. He might seem puzzling uh, and irritating, but he means well. He means to kind of break down things to their basic components and come up with genuine solutions and answers. So why Socrates does not know the answers and why Plato will not tell us what they are. Again, it's all about his method and approach, which depends on the idea of investigating. I mean, he wants you to do your own research about things. And then when you come back and you exert the needed efforts, I mean, he kind of tweaks the questions again so that you can have more insights. You go back and you do research. It's not confusion that he wants you to be in. It's not trickstery that he wants you to feel. He is trying to make some kind of puzzles out of. Of course, if you have a puzzle, you try to put the clues together and come up with a solution for the problem. Again, another distinction between opinion and knowledge would also help here. Like I said, he doesn't believe in opinions that are not kind of coupled or backed up with experience. So it is, he believes that as long as knowledge and opinion are not based on sense experience and going out and checking for yourself, doing the stuff yourself, it would be very difficult to say with a great amount of certainty that what you're saying is correct. So he may be even fairly confident that the opinions are true. I mean, he knows that sometimes things are intuitive and he can have answers for them, and he can, of course, venture an opinion or two. But he doesn't know why the answer is the one that he is giving. So if he knows the why, which he obviously doesn't, he would venture an answer. But he says, no, I don't have that. I don't have the reasons why something is so and so. That's why I refrain from giving an answer. So Socrates is right to deny that he knows the answers to his questions. So we might still wonder why Socrates does not explain this to the other. Why doesn't he tell them that? It is, like I said, his way of doing things. So it is possible that his aim is not to deceive them, but rather to entice them and us as readers to puzzle out what he means. He is trying to elicit things from us rather than, um, you know, rather than giving it all to you, assuming that you don't know. He believes deep down that you are a rational human being who can do your own thinking. So all he does would be to ask the question, and you go out of your way and do your own research and come up with answers. So this is actually, you need not to lose sight of the fact or forget the fact that this is all about Plato rather than Socrates. Socrates is a mere instrument. He is giving us Plato's ideas and views. So again, Socrates, who happens to be Plato, in disguise, of course, does not try to impart his opinions to the other characters by delivering a lecture. He doesn't want that to happen. That's why he's giving us dialogues rather than lecturing us. Instead, his questions encourage them to think about the issues for themselves. So the discussion cannot proceed unless they have understood and agreed to each step in the argument. So this, I mean, it's as if Plato is trying to give us a lesson in how to make arguments and go about, kind of sharing them and supporting or refuting them, which is more or less, like I said, is a Socratic way of doing things. So it's philosophical knowledge that we are uh, um, here in front of. So Plato believes that what we're doing is philosophical, and what we are trying to gain is philosophical knowledge. Again, that would bring us to the idea of the Socratic method and the fact that it is used in education. And I have given you examples of that. The, the mosaic that we spoke about, remember those? One of them, the one on the left, is the traditional one where somebody is giving a lecture, like what I'm doing right now. And those people are only receiving. But when you go to the right-handed picture and the one at the bottom, you will see that these are men who are, discussing things and debating things. It's very difficult to even, kind of determine who among them is the teacher. Again, it's all about asking questions and then asking further questions and so on and so forth. So the right-handed picture and the one at the bottom are inspired by the Socratic method, which depends on asking philosophical questions and never and furthering the questions and furthering the debate and everything in between. So Plato's views on knowledge might explain why he chose to write dialogues rather than essays. He wrote dialogues to avoid simply presenting us with his opinions. This is what lecturing is all about. This is direct teaching, which he doesn't do because he engages us in dialogues. So he avoids presenting us with his opinions, but instead encourages us to reflect on the questions raised by his characters. So, and as we read, we ourselves as readers, we can imagine ourselves joining in the conversation, giving our own answers to Socrates' questions and our reactions to his arguments. So again, it's all about not providing us with a clear answer. Again, in order to invite us to continue the investigation for ourselves. Spoke enough about the Socratic method in teaching and learning, and we said that this is done all over the world. We still have people who are using it, even in teaching and learning. Now they call it guided discovery. So this method allows you to discover things for yourself with the guide and guidance and with the help of your teacher. So the conversation that Plato presents in the Laches is set in Athens at some point around 420 BCE, before Common Era. So we're talking about an area in history where Greece, and when Greece was a great civilization, that was a time when there was this rivalry between Athens and Sparta, two very big nation states. One of them is very militarized, Sparta, and the other is very, kind of philosophical and very scientific and very civil. Again, the idea here would be, again, about education, the best education that people can get. This is how it all started. I mean, how the dialogue started. And the fact that we have two gentlemen, Lysimachus and Melesius, and they are discussing how to educate their sons. And they wonder whether a course of fighting in armor would foster courage and self-discipline. They want their sons to develop courage, to be courageous, and to have self-discipline. And they are, kind of pondering different education programs. They met Lysimachus and Melesius. They will meet Laches and Nicias, who are military leaders. Of course, Nicias and Laches, when you ask them about the best educational program, inspired by their experiences as military leaders, they would say they have to join perhaps the army, and they would talk about courage in very military terms. I mean, when they talk about courage, they would say it's about fortitude, it's about being able to stand your grounds in battles. So Socrates is going to stop them and say, we want those kids to develop courage. But I would like to ask you to define courage for me. And they would start to, of course, relying on and drawing on their military experience, they would limit courage to the idea of standing your ground in a battlefield. So Laches is going to come over and say, it's about standing your ground in a battlefield. Standing your ground means that even if your enemy is attacking you, you don't retreat or you don't go back. This is a mark of courage according to Laches. And then Socrates will come over and say, okay, that's good. But obviously you're limiting it to an aspect of life, which is the military. How about people who are outside the military? Can't they be courageous? Don't they also give us examples of courage? This is where Laches has to go back and reflect on his definition and come back with another. So this is how it will go. You will have people, kind of coming together. They engage in conversations, mental and rational, and of course Socrates is going to ask the questions, and then the other two will come up with answers, and then he asks them further questions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the starting point would be a definition of courage. Remember the two gentlemen who are looking for a convenient and a proper program of education for kids. They met Laches and Nicias, and Laches and Nicias are talking about fostering courage, and of course, for them that only happens if they do military things. So Socrates suggests that in order to find out uh, how to become virtuous, and when they went to Socrates, Socrates is going to say, okay, let's talk um, about virtue. And then obviously virtue is broader than courage, and according to Socrates, courage is part of virtue. He starts off by asking them about a definition for virtue. He suggests that they should address the question, what is courage? So Laches, a military leader, is confident that he will be able to answer Socrates' question. However, Socrates rejects Laches' first attempt at an answer. By looking closely at Laches' answer and the reasons that Socrates gives for rejecting it, we can better understand the nature of the question that Socrates is trying to ask. Okay, so what happened? What is the scenario? Laches answers Socrates' question by describing how a courageous infantryman might behave. Okay, of course, you know the different classifications in the military. You have the infantry, you have the cavaliers, you have, these are different corps, these are different divisions in the military, on the army. So according to Laches, who is a military leader, a courageous man is that infantryman uh, uh, who stands his ground. As you can see, can you see this soldier? Can you see him on the right? Okay.
Yes, yes, we can see it.
So Laches has answered Socrates' question by presenting a specific example of courage. This is a specific example. If you limit courage to the military, if you limit courage to the infantryman, it means that you're leaving out large sections of society. So what happens if you're not, if I am not military, you are not military, does it mean that we are not courageous? So this is a specific example that Socrates wouldn't agree with. So according to Socrates, Laches' answer leaves out many other examples of courageous behavior, both on and off the field of battle. So what Socrates wants Laches to do is to turn his attention away from the details of a specific example, and instead to identify the characteristic that all examples of courage have in common. So what binds and ties people who are courageous, whether they are in the army or outside the army? This is what Socrates is after. Again, he would talk about other, Socrates would tweak the question and the answer so that he can include other things and to prove as false Laches' definition. So this exchange between Socrates and Laches illustrates what is involved in asking a philosophical question. So it brings out the point that philosophy is typically concerned with questions of a very general kind. You're talking about generalities here. So the question that Lysimachus and Melesius ask about the education of their sons concerns a specific practical problem. They have a practical problem involving a specific group of people. So their question is very specific. They have specific problems, which is fine, which is the right to ask about what works best for their sons. But for people like Socrates, it's bigger than that. That's why he's going to take their concerns and make something big out of them. Specific problems can often draw our attention to philosophical questions. So the situation of Lysimachus and Melissus might prompt questions not only about the nature of courage, but also about the purpose of education, about the duties that parents have towards the children. These are big questions. And so answering these very questions would take us beyond the particular circumstances of two Athenian gentlemen trying to do the best for their sons. Again, it always starts specific, but you don't start there. You need to generalize, you need to come up with the big questions behind them. Again, much of the time people deal with the practical problems that they encounter without reflecting. If you reflect on them, general questions will come out of them. Again, Laches is a military leader and he is soaked and rooted in Greek tradition. I wouldn't expect him to say otherwise. So his answer, I'm talking about Laches, reflects traditional Greek views about the nature of courage. This is how they saw courage. This is traditionally what courage means for them. Courage for them is or was associated in the first instance with the qualities required of citizen soldiers fighting in defense of their city. In particular, citizen soldiers fighting as hoplites. Hoplites, those who have this kind of spear and they are wearing this kind of clothes that we have seen, and they are heavily armed, and they fight in rows. And again, their shoulder, they work or they move shoulder to shoulder, and they never retreat. What is interesting about them and what is perhaps courageous about them is that they never retreat. They stand their ground. So each soldier depended on his neighbor to stand his ground through what must have been a frightening and a grueling struggle with the opposing side. So it is perhaps not surprising that standing in the ranks and not running away came to be regarded as a paradigm of courage. Again, this is specific to the army. This is limited to the army. How about people from outside? Aren't they courageous enough? Of course they are. And this is what Socrates takes against the definition of Laches. Again, in order to drive his ideas home, Socrates would use logical arguments. He would ask the question whether courage is endurance. Endurance is the ability to stand something, the ability to forbear, يتحمل, قوة التحمل. He says, isn't that also endurance? This is taking the argument somewhere else, which is typical of Socrates, of course. Okay, so Laches would go, because obviously he failed to convince Socrates. He would go and come back with another definition. He would say that courage is endurance. Socrates would say, yeah, that's correct. And then he starts to kind of examine what Laches is saying. And then he starts to ask him a number of questions. And then he tells him, how about we have, yeah, and I agree with you that endurance is courageous and everything, but we have a kind of endurance that uh, that does not really reflect uh, courage and courageous behavior. And he called it foolish endurance. And that obviously does not amount to courage. He says this is not courageous. And he gives us example. I don't know whether the example that I'll give is here or not. Um, um, you know what endurance is. If somebody, you work in a place, for example, and um, obviously you don't like the place because your workmates are not nice. They keep you after working hours. You have to stay. The salary is not good enough. So, and you endure. You stay for a year and a second and a third and a fourth. This is endurance. You're enduring, right? But is it courageous? Is this, would you consider that, a courageous behavior or a smart one? Let me put it this way.
No?
No, right?
Yes.
So it's exactly, this is what Socrates is referring to as foolish endurance. So as Socrates asks his questions, he gets Laches to assent, to agree to the different steps of an argument. Okay, he gives him everything in the form of an argument in order to convince him. He addresses Laches' sense of logic, and people are all agreed on the merits and the value of logic. So typical of philosophical arguments, you start with a number of premises or what we call claims, and then we move from the premises to the conclusion, النتيجة, مقدمات and نتيجة, if you have done any logic in your high school. So, and we have an example. He says, for example, courage is an admirable thing, something that everybody admires. And then the second premise is foolish endurance is not an admirable thing. So the result or the conclusion would be foolish endurance is not a kind of courage, right? So again, he established the fact that endurance is fine, but there is this brand of endurance that is not admirable, which is foolish endurance. Again, as you can see, it's a logical argument, very well organized. You normally start with premises and then you move from the premises to the conclusion. And then we talk about this kind of philosophical argument. It's for the most part deductive. You move from whatever specific to whatever is general. So this is called deductive reasoning, as we have seen. Again, you would test the validity of what is being said. And so if an argument is valid, it means that the premises are true. And of course, if the premises are true, we can be certain that the conclusion is also true. And we're giving us another argument which is not valid. When I say, for example, metal is good to eat, a premise to gold is not good to eat, so gold is not a kind of metal. So what I would like you to think about that. Look at this very interesting logical argument and tell me what you have understood.
It starts with that metal is good to eat, and metal is not something that a person can eat.
Yeah, so obviously we wouldn't say the premises are not are they true or not? Metal,
No.
when you say metal is good to eat, okay, so and it goes without saying that the conclusion is not going to be valid or sound. When this is more or less silly, right? When I say that gold is not a kind of metal, based on the premises that I made. So the argument is silly because premise one is obviously false. As a result, the argument has generated a false conclusion. Okay? But the argument is valid in the sense that you're following the shape or the mechanism of a logical argument. So the argument is valid. So if courage is an admirable thing, but foolish endurance is not an admirable thing, we can be certain that foolish endurance is not a kind of courage. And then we have another case, the case of the foolish firefighter. So by definition, firefighters are courageous or not? What do you think?
Yes, I think they are courageous.
Yeah, but do we have foolish firefighters? And how can they think of a scenario where you think the firefighter is foolish when he or she does what?
Maybe enter into the fire and there is no one inside. Maybe to get material things.
Yeah, you mean risking his or her own life for nothing?
Yes.
Or like going, walking into a burning place in order to kind of bring out a piece of furniture, for example,
Yes.
or money, or right? So obviously, the sacrifice is not worth, or whatever is inside is not worth the sacrifice, right?
Yes.
That would be foolish, right? This is not being courageous. Olay. Okay, so the argument that Socrates presents in reading 1.3 is valid, but are the premises of the argument true? On the face of it, they do seem plausible. Plausible means possible, but it is always worth thinking carefully about the premises of an argument. So consider the case of a firefighter who stays inside a blazing building at considerable personal risk in order to retrieve a minor piece of equipment. Is that courageous? Is that how we define courage? I'm asking you.
No, he's not courageous.
Okay. So we have a number of scenarios. People would, yeah, it depends. So number one, A would be the firefighter is not being courageous, just foolish, and there is nothing admirable in that. You need to choose one, Irma. So you're either A, B, or C. I would like you to read the three of them and choose one that would describe this act by the firefighter. Go ahead. Take your time. Mayada, are you in? I sent you the link a long time ago. Are you in? Did you manage to, kind of focus?
Yeah, yes, Doctor. With you. Yes.
Alhamdulillah, good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's. Okay. Who are for A? How many people are for A? So can somebody read it out loud for us?
Can I read?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
The fighter is not being courageous, just foolish, and there is nothing admirable in that.
There is nothing admirable in that. What do you think, everyone? Would you go for that?
No.
No.
Okay. Right. Let's move to B. I need somebody to read B for us.
Can I read?
Yeah. Okay.
The firefighter is being courageous, but there is nothing admirable about his or her courage, because it is not being used to good effect.
What do you think, everyone?
No.
I think this, what I have said, the example that I have said about getting inside the fire to rescue a piece of furniture, for example.
Okay. So would you go for B? This is what you're trying to say.
Maybe, yes.
Let's read C and see what it is all about. C. Can somebody read C out loud for us?
May I?
Yeah. Go
Yes,
ahead.
I can. Can I read?
Yeah. Read.
The firefighter is being courageous, and his or her courage is admirable, even thought it is foolish. Yes, it's foolish.
Yeah. It is
I
foolish and
think.
everything. I wouldn't go for C at all. Would you go for C? He's not being courageous, and whatever he did is not admirable. Admirable means that people would like it. No, it's either A or B, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Okay.
B.
So the firefighter is being courageous, but there is nothing admirable about his or her courage because it's not. He's not using his courage in to a good effect, right?
But
Right.
in verdict C, I think, for example, a firefighter enters, for example, to rescue someone, and
Mm.
then instead of going to the closest door, he goes for the farthest door, for example, and this ends up in a miserable way, for example. So this could be an admirable and a courageous act, but at the same time, it was foolish.
You mean C?
Yeah, this is for C.
Yeah, there is obviously nothing admirable about risking your own life for nothing, unless you're trying to, what do they call it? To steal, to be the focus of interest. You would like people to talk about you. إسراء اللقطة زي ما بيقول. There is no real value, no real investment in what he or she does and see. Okay, so again, this is how philosophical arguments are developed. Okay, it's about people thinking, it's about getting people to think and getting people to differ and agree. You see, instead of me or anybody else for that matter giving you one statement and I said this is the definition of courage, right? So people in philosophy and in logic, people think they have a number of options to choose from, and the choice is pretty much dependent on your mind and how you see stuff and how you construct an argument and go about defending it and backing it up with correct premises and so on and so forth. So this is only a taste of what arguments and logical arguments look like. I'm not going to discuss what he says because obviously it's all it comes down to what we've been agreeing or disagreeing on. Again, what he is trying to kind of um, elaborate here would be the idea that even when you are constructing arguments, you're making your own judgments and assessments and value judgments, and those judgments and values are not binding to some people. I mean, you might see it different. Those values that you believe are value might not be so in other culture and with other people. And then we move to Nicias. So this was all about Laches and what he said about courage. And then when we move to Nicias, he would give us a different definition of courage. And according to him, courage is knowledge of what is fearful and what is encouraging. Okay, he would go with this definition of courage to Socrates. What do you think? What do you think? You now know the personality and the character of Socrates. Do you think that he would say, yes, you're great, you're doing an excellent job, thank you so much, this is what I wanted? Do you think this is how Socrates will react? I mean, given the fact that we've been doing him for quite some time. What do you think?
No, he's not
No.
going to do this.
What is what? Yeah. Now he is now very predictable. I mean, Socrates. What do you think he's going to do?
He's just going to leave them.
He's going to do what?
Leave them.
Leave
Read.
them?
He's not
Read?
going to. No, leave.
Ah,
To
I mean, he's going to ask further questions, right?
yes.
So Laches's definition characterized courage as the ability to behave in a certain way. This was Laches, which was to stand firm in the face of danger or hardship. Nicias, on the other hand, focuses on the quality that he takes to underline courageous behavior. That is a kind of wisdom or knowledge. According to Nicias, it's not about a physical action that you make or give in the case of Laches. It's about the knowledge. It's about the wisdom that is behind actions. So according to him, courage is a kind of wisdom or knowledge. Again, you have two totally different definitions. One of them is physical and the other is too theoretical, right? Again, Laches, before Socrates takes over, is going to accuse his friend of talking nonsense. Nicias says a little, this is according to Laches, Nicias says a little more about the kind of knowledge he takes courage to be. So Nicias has in mind, what he has in mind actually, is not the ability to predict what is about to happen, but rather the ability to evaluate different outcomes as good or bad. So he says that it's the wisdom behind the action. Before doing the action, you kind of evaluate and assess the situation and see whether to do the stuff or not, because you can be um, um, courageous in a wrong-headed way. You can be courageous and reckless. So what do you think of reckless drivers? When you look at it, you would say that this guy is very courageous. I mean, he drives at 200 kilos per hour or stuff like that. This is a reckless behavior, and at the same time, some people may look at it as being courageous, right? So again, according to Nicias, you would need to think of this act of recklessness before you say that this is good or this is bad. So his point is that courage is a matter of knowing the value of things. So that's evaluating things. It's about making an assessment of the situation. You assess the situation before or even after in order to say, yeah, this is good or bad. And this is what they are now using in politics and in management. They normally talk about an assessment of a situation. They say, تقدير موقف. And I'm sure you have heard this phrase, تقدير موقف. We need a تقدير موقف report, for example. Before, countries, for example, before they talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, before they make a stand, they normally ask their advisors to come up with an assessment of the situation in order to say whether Russia is on the wrong or whether Ukraine is the victim and so on and so forth. Okay, but this is what Nicias is after. It's about assessing situations so that you can come up with what he thinks or what he believes as knowledge, true knowledge and true wisdom. So a courageous person will know whether or not it is worth sacrificing his or her life for the sake of a military victory, or whether it is worth risking wealth and reputation in order to defend a moral principle. You need to think before you act. Again, that would make you different from a cowardly person who is someone who overestimates the value of his or her own life and stuff like that. So as you can see, unlike Laches, Nicias is able to distinguish cases of courage from cases of mere foolhardiness, foolishness. So again, as you can see, Nicias does not try to explain what kind of things a courageous person will value. So his definition of courage will not tell us on its own whether a particular case is an example of courage or of foolhardiness. Again, that would take experience and all. So to decide that, we would have to know whether or not personal safety really is more valuable than a minor piece of equipment. Again, that would involve asking all sorts of questions like Socrates does. And we have, in order to test the validity of what Nicias is saying, we have an example. Or a test, actually. So could Nicias be right to suggest that knowledge is all that is needed for courage? Knowing and assessing the situation. One objection that might be made to this is that people sometimes know the best thing to do but lack the willpower to do it. So you know that this is the right thing to do, but you're lazy, you don't do it. You know, for you have money, and you are willing to help people, you have the knowledge that helping people is good and it can help you, but you don't have the willpower. You're lazy enough not to go out and seek people who need money. You just stay. Right? So this is one of the objections with what Nicias is saying about courage. You can have the knowledge, but you're not acting on it. You're not fulfilling the practical part of it. You lack the willpower to do it. Imagine the situation of a woman who sees a child trapped inside a burning house. So what do you think of this scenario? You have a woman who sees a child trapped inside a burning house, and suppose that the woman knows that the best thing she could do is to try to save or rescue the child. Isn't that knowledge? And isn't that good knowledge? Right?
Yes.
This is knowledge so far. She knows.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, this is knowledge, and this is courageous according to Nicias. Will she necessarily run into the flames?
No.
She doesn't have this willpower to sacrifice and go inside and try to see how she can save the child. So she doesn't have this willpower part that we're talking about. So Anisius seems to be assuming that when people really know the best thing to do, they will necessarily act on that knowledge. Is that so? We all have the knowledge that studying very hard will earn us good marks and we will pass. But do we all act on this knowledge?
No.
So what will happen if we all act on this knowledge? All of us will pass. Do we
Yes.
all pass? Do we all succeed?
Maybe.
No, we don't all succeed, right? So we have the knowledge that studying hard is good, but we don't know, we fail, not all of us, we fail to act on that knowledge. Okay, you see how interesting philosophical arguments are? Do you like them?
Yes.
Uh,
It works
they,
in the
they,
mind.
they are all about, exciting you and exciting your mind, inviting you to think, not to take things for granted like we always do.
They are widening our things and ideas.
Yeah, it's all about ideas that you need to think about, you need to question and challenge. Again, Socrates will come in and talk more about courage being a part of virtue and all these kinds of things. So there is obviously something very puzzling about the argument that we explored in the last section. You may have noticed that when Nicias first introduces his definition of courage, he says that it is the kind of thing that he has often heard Socrates say. He says, Nicias, when asked about his definition, he said, I heard Socrates say this, and if Socrates says it, he knows it all, for I am kind of imitating or copying him. Again, it doesn't go this way. Socrates is going to tell him, no, you shouldn't be saying that. Because if you say that, you are a mere parrot, بغبغان. And this is all about what Socrates thinks of courage and virtue. Socrates seems to favor the view that all good qualities, including courage and justice, piety and temperance, can be defined as knowledge of what is evil and what is good. He recognizes that this implies that all the qualities are fundamentally the same thing. And he seems to regard this not as an objection, but as an interesting and important discovery. So it's something that you discover as you proceed. Uh, this can be puzzling, and this puzzle can be resolved if we pay attention to Plato's views on another different issue, the difference between knowledge and opinion. I don't know whether we still have time for that or not. I'd rather leave this part, which is very short if you compare it to the other part. I'll leave that, and we'll talk about it next time along with the new chapter. Everyone, do you have any questions?
No, doctor.
Okay.
No,
No,
thanks.
thank you.
Okay, so like I said, if the calendar says that we have quest 2 next week, I'll post some kind of announcement on LMS, inshallah. I would like you to kind of check the LMS tomorrow. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Bye bye.
Doctor,
Yes.
Thanks,
about
doctor.
the grades, PMA,
What?
grades.